I will say I just want to quickly go over how we're going to look this season, like players to watch, and then we can get into personal stuff. Is that all right?
Yeah, fine. I just wanted to see where the timestamp was at and everything.
Fine. All right. I see.
What?
Yeah.
Huh?
All right. So players to watch. I'm going to quickly get into this. Man, Baird Hayden has looked like a man on a mission. I think he has like 6 points in 4 games. I hope it continues, because if he can solidify at least a second line center position this year, I will be extremely happy with his development, because man, it was looking a little grim, and looking back at that draft and all the players that we passed up on for him, right? It was a little scary, because I remember that draft. I said if Tkachuk wasn't there, which he wasn't, that we should pick up Quentin Hughes. And seeing how well Quentin Hughes has been doing offensively in Vancouver has been real sad. So I want Barrett Hayden to succeed. I don't want him to loom in that shadow in my mind. I want him to be the guy that we look back on and go, okay, this might be the best centerman in the draft.
All I'm going to say is, with how I've noticed a little bit, because some of the highlights I was watching, and I think I tuned in for a little bit of one of the games that he was playing in. Mm-hmm. I want to say it was against Anaheim, but memory. But just the different way he's skating, the kind of the drive he's developed so far just in the preseason. So again, cautious, but it looks like maybe whatever was said behind the scenes, because there was that long negotiation. Yep. There was the long silence. There was is he still going to be here? Like, are they going to try to trade him? What's going on here? Maybe something was said that essentially jolted him, that essentially got him to wake up from whatever is, like, whether it is just he fully healed, whether it was a mental block, whether it was fully embracing a rebuild, anything that was said. Maybe it was literally just like the classic, oh, you ain't good enough kid. Maybe. Yeah. I got no inside sources, like none. But that probably communicates to me something was said, and he is now like dead set on proving it wrong. Even if what was said was as simple as, you're not worth $6 million a season, and he's like, I'm going to be. Even if it's something as simple as that. So I'm like, if he continues it into the regular season, let's say if he can get to 19 goals this year.
Yep.
I'll take it. I want 20 goals, but the amount of times I've said, oh, he should be a 20-goal scorer, and they didn't, I'm like, I'm just going to say 19, change it up a little bit. If he can get 19 goals, I'm more than happy. If he can get, would you say 35 is asking too much, or would you say around 40 is where, like, you want him to be this year and in that
points or assists?
Points, total points.
I would say, man, I'm going to go with the Derek Stepan approach. It's got to be 55. Mr. puts up 55 points a season. I would say 55 is my goal. If you're in the second line position, I want to see 55 points, and I'm happy.
I'll take minimum 45 then, or 40, like 40. You know what? 41 minimum. Give me like a half a point per game. Like, I know that's a little bit of adjusted standards and whatnot, but like I also don't want to put too much on the kid just yet. It's like, he's showing good development. It's been consistent, but I want to see that jump. So 41 points will be a success in my mind.
Okay.
Another player to watch, Jackery Mcbain, the man among children, all throughout the rookie camp, all throughout the prospect camp, all throughout the training camp so far that I've seen.
Yep.
The fact that even Nathan Smith was on a different level and he didn't make the team. And remember, the rosters are not finalized. Mcbain could still get sent down. I don't see it, but then again, I also saw both him and Smith making the roster. So make of that what you will. But he beat out Smith, and I think to a small degree, not quite like 100%, but like in terms of overall production, I think Smith outplayed him.
Yeah.
I like McBain's game more, but I think that Smith, scoring-wise, outplayed him, and he got sent down. Like, I think McBain is going to be around a 20-goal scorer.
I think
how good he is.
I think the reason for that was because we could see McBain playing the bottom six and he'd be good. And I think ultimately they didn't see Nathan Smith surpassing anybody in the top six. So I think that was kind of what happened. Whereas I think Nathan Smith might have been the better player over Jack McBain. But given the role availability, that was what probably forced their hand. What surprised me is just how quickly out of camp he was, right? I figured he would at least make it to the final cut. And then you're like, okay, you looked great. We're sending you down. But, to drop him down so quickly, that was the surprise to me.
That even makes sense because, like, if Mcbain, let's say it's like that would also fit with literally what I just said, where it's like, Smith was a better offensive player. If they know what their top six already looks like, which is going to be Schmaltz, Keller, Boyd, that's already your top line, probably Krauser, Hayton, and you could throw anyone else on the right side. But I don't know if they're like, hey, Smith is a more natural center. We want to keep him at center, or if they have someone else to outplay him for that right shot side, that right side. It's looking at it like Mcbain does more all around, so he fits the mold perfectly for depth scoring and defensive responsibility and good face-off percentages on that third line spot. Whereas Smith works better as a second line person, but he's just not good enough yet. So it's like, okay, if we get an injury, let's just say to that right shot side, whoever takes that right wing side, okay, Smith, you're coming up, and that's your spot, that's your shot. So I'm like, that would also like line up perfectly. So I think we're kind of in sync on that one. But I still would not be surprised if Mcbain ends up getting into some. Actually, now that I think about it, what if that's another factor of why Hayden looks so good? Because he knows that with how well Mcbain and Smith were playing, he would have gotten passed up if he didn't hit another gear. And it was literally just another way to unlock more out of the prospects you had. Like that. Yeah. I don't think Mcbain's going to care about getting third line minutes. I still a top six role at the NHL level. And I think he's good enough for it.
It makes sense. Competition is good. This is why you have to light a fire under a developing player's butt. This is why. This is what gets them to that next level. They're not just given a role and told this is your role. We've seen that in the past with the Coyotes, and you end up with Brendan Pirolini. Sorry, but it's true, and actually lighting a fire under a developing player's butt and telling them your position could be gone in one bad game. Don't F up. And I actually agree with you. That makes a lot of sense of why we're seeing some really good play out of Barrett Hayden, because we've seen it before in the past. Like when he got that call up last year, those first few games, he looked, ecstatic. He looked great. And then it kind of just tapered off a little by little. And it makes sense, hey, prove yourself or else there's somebody hungrier behind you that will take it.
And Mcbain and Smith are very hungry. I was enamored by both the entire camp. Literally not a single minute of the camp was I like, oh, Smith looks okay, or Mcbain looks kind of like, no. I was enamored the entire time. So it's like, that should also just go to compliment the work that Hayton's putting in right now. So it's like, I don't care if it took all these extremes for the stars to align. The stars did, and as long as they keep aligning, because it's one thing for preseason. Once again, cautious optimism, but it's one thing for preseason, but if it continues in the regular season, boy, like I've been saying, even as of last year, and guess what? They were better than people thought they were last year. I was right. They might be better than you expect. Does not mean they're not finishing bottom five. I would take fifth, though, a couple spots higher, but
yeah,
go give me a top five pick.
All right, I got one more, and then we'll get into the personals. All right, I don't think anybody is too surprised. I think we were shocked, but we weren't surprised at the production that Clayton Keller produced at last year. 67 games played before his injury, 63 points, 28 goals, 35 assists. He was on pace for 77 points. Barring injury, obviously, do you think that we are going to see this Clayton Keller that we saw last season at a 77-point pace? Maybe does he even hit 80 points this year? What are your thoughts?
I need to see him skate. Like, nothing against Kells. I went from being very critical to loving all the overall, improvements in his game. He is, him and Chick, the best players in the team. I think Clayton Keller is the best player. So that's the perspective I'm coming at this question from. I have to see him skate. He was supposed to skate, I think, last night, and they decided to just take him out for the rest of the preseason, the entire preseason, for kind of precautionary reasons. And I agree and disagree, because if he comes out to a sluggish start, it could either almost derail the train that is the season, or it could just be that a sluggish start.
Yeah.
And there also could be the mental aspect I was talking about when he got injured of he also might not be the same exact skater and overall player he was because you break your femur clean and tell me that you feel 100% confident going as fast as he used to. So It's like not saying he can't, but I need to see him skate.
Yep.
If he looks good, close to the Clayton Keller of last year, 30 goals, at least 40 assists, not even like a question. 100%, 70 points. Not even questioning it. If there's any other variable there, it depends on how anything else moves forward. And I really want to see this kid come out and like score in the first game. I want to see a hot start. I want to see him look just like the old Clayton Keller. I want people to look at my like caution here and be like, you're an idiot. Please. I want to be called an idiot because like he's the future. It's him, Gunner, Cooley. It's like these are guys that they need to all be there at their best. And I don't want to see like Clayton Keller's career derail. So it's a bit of a convoluted answer, but it comes down to I need to see him skate.
Okay, fair enough. Well, that's all that I have. So do you want to move on or do you have anything else?
Look to JJ Moser to establish himself as a full-time top four. Like full-time, not just fringe, not just, it's like he was so impressive last year. And I know a lot of injuries, a lot of it's like I don't see there being 4 defensemen better than him on the team. Yep. No disrespect to anyone. Yep. That is how like above like shatter my expectations. I knew he was good defensively. I didn't know he could add the amount of depth scoring that he did because I expected nothing. The kind of on ice by example leadership I saw out of a 20-year-old, 21-year-old kid like that. You can't teach that stuff. How responsible he was, positioning.
I was going to say the crazy part is if Chychrun gets traded, I suspect that Gostisbehere is going to get traded at the deadline. All of a sudden, Moser is our first line left wing, lefty. Like that's a big jump for a young kid like that. So I'm really curious to see how he takes that because all of a sudden, man, you are commanding that first line lefty position, and I'm really curious to see how he's going to embrace that at the end of the season. If obviously there aren't another player that comes in via trade or something like that,
unless we get like a superstar defenseman or something.
Yeah, who knows?
But all I know is that it's just I keep an eye on him. I do also want to bring a cautious eye, like not a player to look for in like the positive sense, but a player to look for. And I know, and I do believe this: defensemen take longer, goalies take longer. Soderstrom has to show something this year because he was kind of getting that shot back in the offense back a little bit in the AHL. When he came back up, I saw nothing at the NHL level. It isn't just about scoring. It's about also showing that shoot first. Like that quote, and it was whenever he took Capobianco's spot, I think a year or two ago, he's like, I would just shoot the puck. And he came in for a couple of games. He did that. And I was like, shoot first. That's one of your biggest strengths. Very, good with moving the puck. I think his defense is okay. I think he got a little bit better defensively, strictly defensively. But I need to see you're an NHL level player. I want that offense back because if he can't get the offense back, we wasted, 7th overall for him on what will end up being.
It was 11th or 12th, I want to say. Yeah.
Then we wasted 11th overall on essentially a bottom pairing defensive defenseman. And you can use those, but I would have rather had Cole Caulfield.
Yeah, well, honestly. I mean, with the amount of hype that he was getting too in that draft, like people crazy enough, including myself, were saying that, I wouldn't say he was as good, but there were some comparables to like a Victor Hedman, like a light Victor Hedman, like a really light. Like I'm not talking Norris caliber. I'm just saying like the play style of Victor Hedman. And
so it's like I want some of that back. It's like I need that back because like. Anything less than that is a bust. And nothing against him personally, but it's just, especially when we know what we could have got. And we needed that scoring winger. Cole Caulfield would have been great with Coach Tournier and this system, this kind of building. Or if Coach Tournier comes in anyway and they still try to compete, Cole Caulfield would have helped us with that. Doesn't mean he'd have been the exact same player because, well, player development for this franchise in Montreal is different. But still, I would have rather had that offensive upside because if Soderstrom doesn't start to show something, it's like nothing personal. I would have rather had, Caulfield.
Yeah, of course, 100%. I think everybody can agree with that. I think it really comes down to that post-deadline team. The way it looks, it's going to be ravaged with trades. I'm suspecting it now. The amount of retainment slots that the Coyotes have, I think they still have 2, correct? I
think it's at least 2.
Yeah, you're going to be able to retain on at least 2 players this deadline. Players that are on expiring contracts that you're going to see teams pick up. I'm not going to say Patrick Nemeth is going to get traded for a lot, but I could see a veteran defenseman right-handed like him. You retain on that. All of a sudden, I think he's like $1 million. A team's going to pay like a 6th or 7th just to have that insurance that can sit in the healthy scratch.
Especially if he plays better this year. Especially if with that ice time, he's like a little lower pressure, a different kind of role. Gets the ice time, improves. Then he goes from that reputation he had coming out of New York. A lot of New York fans were like, "Oh, good, thanks for taking our trash," essentially. But it's like if we can turn that into even a 5th round pick, that's probably the highest value it would be.
It wouldn't be any higher than that.
If you can turn it into that, that's a win.
Yeah,
honestly, hand to God, that's a win.